Hello everyone, welcome to GoTarryn TV. This is Dr. T, PhD, the prodigy of sports psychology, and I'm here for your special data analysis edition for the academic research study in the self-determination of millennials in realizing their personal training goals. This week is actually week number 5 of the playlist, and that means that we're going to be looking at the 5th key strategic point and also interviewing participant number 5 in today's study. So before I talk about the 5th participant here, I'm going to tell you about the 5th key strategic point of the 10. So we're halfway there, and I mentioned the first 4 key strategic points in the last 4 weeks. So that leads us today to the research question of the study. That's correct. The research question, which starts with the encompassing, overarching question of how do millennials describe self-determination as a contributor to realizing their current personal training goals, followed by the very first research question, how do millennials describe their self-determination in terms of autonomy, competence, and relatedness, and then following research questions 2, 3, and 4, which specifically are covering these interview through thematic analysis that we're doing every week, because we're talking about how they're describing their autonomy, competence, and relatedness respectively in those last 3 research questions. But let's get back to the overarching research question. And the overarching research question, as I was mentioning, that is where we're going to give a description of the phenomena in terms of what the study found in its research and its conclusions. And the very first research question was a survey that I mentioned last week that the first 50 participants found via Amazon Mechanical Turk filled out, and that was the Basic Psychological Satisfaction Needs Frustration Scale survey by the Self-Determination Theory website, which is selfdeterminationtheory.org. And I strongly urge everyone to check that out, because that is where this actual survey was founded upon, among many others, thanks to Richard Ryan and Edward Deci. And that's what I used for the quantitative statistics part of the study, was that very first research question, and answering in terms of what they felt on that 5-point Likert scale 24 questionnaire that they had. And so again, as I mentioned, the last several weeks, including today, throughout the 10 weeks, we're talking to those 10 participants of research questions 2 through 4. How does autonomy affect their self-determination as a contributor? How does their competence affect their motivation as a contributor? As well as how do they reach their personal training goals through relatedness? And that is what we will be discussing today with participant number 5. We're going to delve into the relatedness portion of it and talk to that person and interview that individual here momentarily. And before we jump into it, I'd like to ask everyone out there to please make sure to like this video, leave us a comment, and share it with all of your friends and family. Now, without any further ado, let's jump into that interview right now. Okay, we have our participant on the line for the interview here for the self-determination of millennials and how they describe their personal training goals. Right now, I have the participant on the line. I just want to confirm, can the participant please let me know that they can hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Wonderful. Okay. And you're coming through loud and clear on. And I just wanted to touch just a few things here before I jump into the interview with you. First, and most importantly, I want to thank you so much for your time. And I really appreciate you being able to fill out the self-determination survey that you previously did, which you scored very highly on, as well as your goal attainment that you scored very, very impressively on. And we'll get on to that here momentarily. But first, you were brought to us and selected as one of the participants in this study, being a millennial, and we're trying to figure out in our purpose to study how millennials describe self-determination as a contributor to realizing their current personal training goals. The length of this interview will approximately go from anywhere between 40 to 60 minutes. Your information is going to be extremely valuable to this study, and how we share that study will be providing descriptive summaries, including individual self-determination profiles. The process for this interview is such that I will be asking you open-ended questions, and as you know, we are recording now. Please go ahead and for me, give me a yes or no answer on this question, number 1. Before we start, were you provided the informed consent form for the survey that you filled out for us?
Yes.
And did you understand and acknowledge everything in that survey?
Yes.
Okay, great. And then secondly, were you provided an informed consent form for the interview that I'm about to conduct with you?
Yes.
Okay, and was everything pretty much clear in that survey, or rather interview consent form as well?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, I just want to reiterate and stress that confidentiality, pardon me, will be maintained at all times. We'll be providing, at no time will I be asking any personal information from you, including your name. And you have the ability to stop this interview without any consequences. You can stop the interview at any time at your own volition. And at any time, if any question doesn't make sense, please stop me and let me know that I can repeat that question, or if you need more clarification or an example. But before we go in and jump into this study, there will be time at the end of the interview if you have any questions to ask or any comments you'd like to make. You previously, as I mentioned, filled out a survey for us called the Basic Psychological Need Satisfaction and Frustration Scale. And as I mentioned, scoring very highly on that as part of the selection process, in addition to the goal attainment that you gave us. Now, back to the survey that you filled out. That survey was divided into 24 different items, basically talking about autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Those three main components is what we'll be focusing on. The purpose of that survey was to determine how autonomy, competence, and relatedness play a factor into your own self-determination. Now, what we're going to do is go a little deeper here and apply that survey that you provided towards personal training goals. My overarching question for my study that I'm conducting is, how do millennials describe self-determination as a contributor to realizing their current personal training goals? Research question number one is, how do millennials describe their self-determination in terms of autonomy, competence, and relatedness? You've answered that already with the survey. We'll move on now to research question number two, is what we're going to talk about, the first part of this component of autonomy. How do millennials describe autonomy as a contributor to realizing their current personal training goals? So before I ask you the very first question here, participant, I'd like to just tell you what we're looking for in autonomy when I'm going to ask you these questions. So autonomy is defined by self-determination theory as, quote, the desire to be causal agents of one's own life and act in harmony with one's integrated self. So for example, think of autonomy as someone who's very independent in their own free will. And another example of that is one of the questions on the survey you filled out for us was just using question the first one. I feel a sense of choice and freedom in the things that I undertake. And you scored high on that for yourself. So my first question, as we jump now into the interview, the first question here, well, before I ask you, do you kind of have an understanding of what we mean by autonomy?
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So question number one, can you describe whether you had some degree of autonomy, or to what degree your autonomy was in your personal training program, be it none at all, small, medium, large? Please give us a description of that autonomy as it was in your personal training program.
Well, for me, I was able to really pick and choose what I wanted and what I was looking for. I had certain goals in mind, and when I was working out my blueprint for working out and for reaching my goals, I had that discussion with my trainer, and my trainer designed a whole platform or whole idea or game plan for reaching my goals. And with some of the things that we talked about were some of the exercises that I particularly like to do, and those drove the design of the sessions.
Good. Give us, please, a little further insight on some of those exercises. Can you provide some examples, for example, that the exercises you just mentioned that interested you, and how that process was with agreeing with your personal trainer?
Sure. My favorite exercise is push-ups.
Okay.
And we did a lot of variations of push-ups to meet different types of goals. So, one of the goals was more core strength and explosive movement. So doing burpees, which has the push-up involved,
Hmm.
throwing leg lifts into push-ups and doing and like twisting into a plank after push-up. Stuff like that was really what also made things more interesting for me.
Okay. And you've mentioned the word interesting here in your answers a couple of times. And so, how does that tie into specifically how important for you is your exercises to meet your interests in your program?
But exercise should be fun. You look at
Mm,
playing sports.
uh-huh.
That's a huge mode of exercise. People don't like a lot of. There are plenty of people out there who don't like to work out, but will get their exercise through sports.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, sports isn't really enough.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you might people who are still out of shape and are using that for their exercise will still play the sport, even though they're not going to get into enough shape. So, because they're interested in that sport, so being able to be interested in your exercise is super important. So, doing push-ups, which keeps me interested, was extremely important to me as well.
Mm, okay. Okay. Very good. Um, let's ask you this in terms of and you touched on this a little bit, in terms of your own autonomy of creating your own decisions. Do you then feel like those exercises in your program were a reflection of your own decisions?
For sure, because we had to get certain things finished, but he also knew that he had to throw some push-ups into my sessions. He he worked around the push-ups, like because they're doing a good amount of shoulder work. Instead of pounding me with as much weight as possible after doing x amount of push-ups, he would do a lighter weight, more reps or something, so I wouldn't overdo my shoulders and stuff like that.
Good, good. How about then this question to you? Were there any times that you could think of during your personal training program where you felt like you had to do the things that your trainer was asking of you because you were being forced to?
um it's tough for me because part of my goals required exercise that I didn't like to do, specifically running. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
like running, but that was part of my goals was to be able to run a certain amount. So
Mm.
built in was stuff I didn't like because of my goals. So if it wasn't part of my goals, he probably wouldn't have had me do it, and I wouldn't have felt forced to do it. So that's
Interesting.
kind of a catch-22 question for me.
Good, good. How about in terms of the choices that you had? And we can choose, let's just say that you had a series of exercises, whether it was push-ups or any other exercises that you like to do. How would you say, in terms of those choices you had, do you feel that those were an expression of who you are? And in other words, for an example, if someone were to describe you and say, yeah, this person in terms of autonomy, that definitely is an expression of who he is because these are the exercises he likes to do. Is that fair?
I'm not quite sure. I mean, I understand that, but every time I do push-ups, people know I like to do push-ups.
Mm-hmm.
So if
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing a push-up or a variant of a push-up, that's kind of indicative of my workout style, and people will know. Will know
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm. Good. And then a little further into that, then let me ask you this. How were any times, if you can think of any, and they existed, were there opportunities or times where you felt pressured that you were doing too many things in your personal training program?
I mean, I think at the beginning I was being put. I did get pushed a little bit to do more than I could handle. Um, and I did get some inflammation in my shoulder and in my hip. Um, but then I have had a history of injuries there, and the trainer didn't know about that. And I didn't know the severity of them to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought I was getting pushed a little harder, but I really wanted to be pushed that way. So it was kind of a, I mean, it was a mistake to be pushing that hard on the from the onset.
Hmm. And let me ask you this, in overall of your personal training program, do you feel as if your own intrinsic motivation had improved and increased during the whole program?
Not the motivation. The motivation was there the entire time, but
Mhm.
definitely the empowerment grew.
Mm. Can you please further elaborate on that word, empowerment? What do you mean by this?
The ability to reach my goals and to get things done and to say, hey, look, I can be in great shape. I can be strong. I can be fit. I can have um what's it called? Resilient, not resilience, just the ability to go for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Maybe stamina or endurance
Yeah, but endurance. Yeah.
to some degree. Okay. Good. Let me ask you this, and again, speaking about that intrinsic motivation, but also empowerment. When you first started your program, and again, you've used the word goals very frequently, which indicates to me then that you were goal oriented from the very beginning. Is that fair for me to assume that that was from the very beginning? Your
Yeah.
goals were always okay. Yes. And what about that empowerment too? Was that important for you when picking a personal trainer, that that personal trainer was going to agree that your interests, your empowerment, that that came first and foremost in building your goals and your program?
The empowerment never crossed my mind until after I already had it and
Mm-hmm.
realized that I had it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was more of a post revelation type thing.
Interesting. Okay. And how about in terms of your freedom? Let's delve into that a little bit. How would you give a description of your own freedom in your personal training program and your experience during this whole process?
I mean, I felt like I really was able to do what I wanted and choose what I wanted, really um, and really dictate what the sessions would in general look like. However, I really am not picky and didn't really push to do something specific.
Okay. Good. And let me ask you this question. What about any type of outside forces that caused you to be derailed, slow down, or have to alter your personal training program? Was there any time that any type of outside external forces caused you to lose autonomy, lose motivation during your workouts?
Uh, not particularly. I mean, you have those down days where you don't really want to work out, and so like instead of putting into a 40-minute workout because of the way I like to work out, I could still just say, all right, for 2 minutes, I can just do as many push-ups as I can, and that's not only a good workout or it's a great workout, it's just a way to keep things going, even though you really don't want to put in a full hard effort, even then, but then you don't without really realizing how much effort doing as many push-ups as you can really does.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so it's just an easy way, it's bedtime. I really didn't work out. I was in a terrible mood today. Try to get to 100 push-ups and however fast you can do it. That's going to tire you out, and that's going to be a good workout and get a ton of muscles going. So that was a good way to really not miss and not really be derailed at all.
Excellent. Okay, good. And let me ask you this question. This is a general question regarding your autonomy. So, when I ask you this question, and we're still talking about your own empowerment, your own intrinsic motivation, your autonomy, your independence, how much did this one component contribute in your success of achieving your personal training goals?
It was huge because on stints where either I didn't have equipment available, or the trainer was away, or I was trying to save up as much money financially.
Mm-hmm.
Keeping the momentum with some push-ups was a huge deal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good. Okay. Well, the first component of self-determination theory is autonomy. That's the first component of the three. And so I'd like to move on now to the second component, which was competence. And just to tell you the definition of what we're talking about when we speak about competence, according to self-determination theory, competence is defined as to seek control and the outcome and experience mastery. So, for example, it may be to master a certain skill, such as a workout exercise in your personal training program, let's say. And so, for research question number 3, the question is, how do millennials describe competence as a contributor to realizing their personal training goals? So my very first question to you in this section then is, can you please describe whether you had some degree of competence or to what degree your competence was, whether it had no factor, small, medium, or large?
Well, if you're not competent, you're not going to see a whole lot of results.
Mm-hmm.
So, and not seeing results, especially when you're working really, really hard, is going to be, let's call it, say, detrimental to your overall effort.
Mm-hmm.
So, competence is super important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And very true. And for example, on your survey that you filled out for us, and this is not talking about personal training per se necessarily, but on one of the items where it says, I feel confident that I can do things well, you scored very high on that as well, implying that confidence is in very much alignment with your self-determination as far as competence is concerned, which is a synonym in most cases for that word. So is it fair then to what you just said? You kind of answered that question. Please go ahead and delve a little bit into further detail of what that looks like. What is the difference? Give us an example of someone who's highly competent in achieving their personal training goals versus someone who has little to no competence in trying to achieve that person's personal training goals.
Sure. I mean, the big thing is you're gonna see somebody who can knock themselves out, really get sore and really tired in 20 minutes, and see actual gains in those 20 minutes versus someone who's at the gym for an hour and a half, and they're basically flatlining on their progress.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the idea. And I've talked to people in the past and say, hey, the workouts I designed for myself are they can take 20 minutes, and and I'll see hypertrophy on my arms and my legs.
Mm-hmm.
And then you talk to somebody like, oh my gosh, I've been into it at the gym, and I've been doing this, I've been doing that for an hour,
Mm.
and I haven't lost any weight, and I haven't felt good, and I'm never sore, and all those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
So you can just tell the difference between the competency of how you design your workouts.
Mm-hmm. Good answer. I like that. Let me ask you this then, in terms of personal training and your goals. Can you tell us at any time of an example when you might have had any serious doubts about whether you were performing or doing something correctly?
Yeah. Squats and deadlifts.
Mm-hmm.
Those are two huge issues that I had, and whether I was performing them right or not.
Mm. What was it about that questioned you in particular?
Well, so um, a big issue is that I had a torn labrum, and I was very nervous about them to begin with. And I never worked out in front of a mirror to see what it looks like. And you hear people's advice in the gym about doing them, like where should your knees go, where should they be, where your
Mm-hmm.
feet are, all those things.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just like people say different things, like, "Oh, your knees should be, you know, right on the over the big toe, and they shouldn't push forward as you go down at all, and all those kinds of things." And it was very disconcerting, and I was very uncomfortable with the way I didn't understand how squats are to be done, and I didn't want to hurt myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You mentioned that that might have made you feel uncomfortable. How important is feeling comfortable versus uncomfortable in terms of competency when you're doing any of your exercises and workouts?
Well, I was very, I mean, it's huge when it's a big deal to, a big thing about my training was not getting hurt.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So, because I needed to perform physically, a huge thing I do for my basic sanity is playing tennis. And if I get hurt and can't play tennis, I'm gonna be, I'm gonna have a bad time,
Mm.
especially at the beginning. But now, that I've got my squats down and I've got deadlifts down, and I've basically really helped myself with body mechanics, body strength to not get hurt while playing tennis or hockey. Um, that's a big deal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Was there any time where you might have felt disappointed with how you performed in any of the exercises?
Yeah, for sure. When I'm doing an exercise and I've done it for a while and I haven't paid as much attention, whether I'm thinking about something else, and then I don't, and then I feel like I just wasted an hour or 20 minutes doing a workout, not doing it right and not activating the proper muscles.
Mm-hmm.
I do like my workouts to be on the faster side and to be very on point and very targeted.
Mm-hmm.
And when I waste my time and do a workout and not because I'm not, squeezing my glutes or I'm not doing something and I'm not realizing it, then I didn't get the core work done. I didn't have um, the proper form, so I didn't work out the muscles that they should have been.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good. How about let's talk about capabilities for a minute here. As you know, we know competency goes hand in hand with one's ability to feel like they're capable of performing exercises. Can you tell us at any point in time about any illustrations of what it looked like when you had what seemed to be highly demanding, very difficult tasks to perform, and whether you asked yourself if you were capable or enough to do it?
Can you just repeat that one more time?
Yes. So, for example, looking at this, were there any times where you might have felt like something might have been highly challenging or demanding to where your capabilities were in question, to where you question yourself if whether or not you were capable of performing some certain exercises?
I mean, yeah, there definitely were a few of them, but those are the kinds of things that I tend to get excited about. You know,
Mm,
that's the fact that it's going to be a really real challenge just to do one of something or to do it for 5 seconds. That's the stuff that kind of gets me. It also gets me kind of excited.
mhm. Can you
Well,
go into that more detail? Just talk about the excitement, please. How is that something that's positive for yourself?
yeah, I like to I like to be challenged and challenge myself. So if I don't, if I'm constantly not pushing the envelope of what I can do, I'm going to get used to something and get bored. So when I'm working out, it's a huge deal for me to be at the beginning like, all right, here's my game plan if I can't finish the what I'm about to do, or if I can't even do what I'm about to attempt to do, or
Hmm.
if while doing this, if I saw this exercise online or something like that I'm trying out, I know what muscles it's supposed to activate, and hopefully it's going to challenge me to be, oh, all right, this is where I'm going to feel it, and if I don't, what do I do instead?
Hmm.
Or how
Good.
long am I going to attempt it before I just move on to something else? And that's one of those things that are really cool to me is how can I, if I can't do this, though, if that question is to an exercise, that's going to be more interesting for me to tackle that exercise.
So is it fair for me to ask or assume that you then preferred exercises that were harder and more challenging rather than exercises that you felt that you were already competent on?
I like a mixture of both.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because it's, let's if you're struggling, if you keep struggling throughout the entire time and you can't just hit a baseline where you're good, it might be too frustrating to get through the rest of that exercise or that workout.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that your personal trainer deserves a little bit of credit, no credit at all, some credit, a lot of credit in terms of how your competency then improved during the program?
No, he gets a decent amount of credit.
Mm-hmm.
He definitely showed me and definitely opened my eyes to different options to make things exciting and
Mm-hmm.
to be more creative with my workouts for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how important was that to you when you first began seeking your personal trainer? Was that something you were thinking about in terms of, I need to make sure that my trainer is going to help build my competency level during this program?
No, I didn't think about it. I just thought about somebody. I had a specific goal
Mm-hmm.
of what I wanted to reach, and it had nothing to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just someone who can teach me how to reach the goal, even if because my goal was such a big deal to me. Even if it
Mm-hmm.
was mundane and boring, I would have been able to push through at least at the start. But
Mm-hmm.
as things progressed and my goals were reached, that to continue pushing on would need more different things, excitement, just different points of interest into my workouts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. D- Did at any point in time, failing at any type of reaching goals or failing at performances in your program ever enter your mind? And if so, what did that look like?
I love failure. I
Interesting.
love it. I love
Okay.
failure. It's a huge. The best part about it was I had something else to push for and to get to, and there's another goal in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I couldn't do 30 sit-ups in 30 seconds. Okay, now I'm gonna try to do that. Something like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good, good. Let me ask you this, kind of to look at this in terms of where competency plays a part of achieving your goals. This is my question to you. Overall, in your personal training program and reaching your goals, then how successful were you thanks to competency?
I mean, competency is a huge factor. 'Cause there's no, like I said before, if you're not competent in what you're doing, you're not going to see results. So no results means dropping out and finishing it, and
Mm-hmm.
not finishing it. So you're not going to reach your goals. You're not going to do anything. So the competency to execute your workouts and execute a design of the workouts was a huge factor in my success.
Good, good. Okay. I'd like to now move on to the third component then of self-determination theory. That word is relatedness. And relatedness is the third of three components that we're looking at here that I want to ask you about. Definition according to self determination theory, relatedness is the willingness to interact with, be connected to, and experience care for others. In other words, a synonym maybe for relatedness could be thought of as belongingness. And so, for example, when we're looking at one of the survey questions that you had answered, one of them was, I feel that the people I care about also care about me. And on that one, interestingly, you had also scored very high on answering that in terms of alignment with your own personal self determination. And so now, when we bring this into talking about relatedness and how important that is with personal training, my question to you is this. And it applies to the research question number 4, how millennials describe relatedness as a contributor to realizing their personal training goals. The question is, Can you please describe whether you had some degree of relatedness or to what degree your relatedness was in your personal training program, whether there was zero, small amount, moderate, large relatedness in your personal training program?
I mean, originally no, but as you know, as I got into better shape and people really noticed, especially the ones around me and the ones who I talk to and really care. Like as we talked about the caring of other people,
Mm-hmm.
the more it positively influenced people around me to seek better health.
Mm-hmm. And so specifically, when you say caring about other people, is it also important, and to what extent is it important that they reciprocate and care about you?
So the so that puts a question kind of into a new light, because as an EMT and as a nursing student, I care about a lot of people and I really like to take care of them, put them on their way.
Mm-hmm.
But most people, you take care of them and they'll never remember who you are. So caring back isn't a huge deal. But the people who care about you, those are the people who really you have a more holistic view of helping. That if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. No, it does. And so specifically with your trainer, was that something that entered your mind, and to what extent, if it did, that was important that you had a good relationship to your personal trainer before you hired them, that you got along with them, that you felt that sense of mutual care, that you felt that sense of, like you mentioned about being able to relate to them in that regard?
Uh, it's a huge deal to be working with a friend.
Mm-hmm.
He's a friend before a trainer, and then we were, and then we after being a friend, he was my personal trainer,
Mm.
and having being able, first of all, being able to talk and have a good relationship with the trainer was a big deal, because otherwise you're working with a drill sergeant.
Mm. Mm.
So having a trainer that you can talk to and relate to about other things while working out, I think very much improves the training session and the relationship between you and the trainer, which really leads to more success, more commitment. Because hey, you like seeing the trainer. He's not just pushing you. You like talking to him. You like interacting. So that brings up the level of satisfaction of a training session.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned about possibly, other in just a few seconds ago about saying that you might have a trainer who's a drill sergeant, just saying that. So let me ask you this then, in that case. The type of trainer who, let's say, is a drill sergeant, very hard and cold and, just mean, let's say, like a boot camp trainer, as opposed to a trainer who's not, who is not going to be that method. How does the trainer who is the boot camp or drill instructor trainer, rather, how are they lacking in that relatedness, if they are? I'm just implying that they are, but how are they
That was my impression
not
too.
succeeding? Mm-hmm.
Um, no, so it's one thing if you're in the army, it's fine, but the huge thing to commitment is building a connection to somebody. When you have,
Mm-hmm.
especially because you have the choice.
Mm-hmm. You just mentioned the word connection, and that was going to bring me to my next kind of lead into that. Talk about what that connection, please, look like between you and your trainer during that whole process. How would you describe that to a third person that was observing the connection that you had with your personal trainer?
Say it one more time.
Yeah. Can you please just talk about the connection that you had with your personal trainer? Can you illustrate some examples during that whole program that stood out, that were so unique, that really define your relationship that you had with your personal trainer, the connectedness part?
Yeah, I mean, we hung out in a social setting.
Mm-hmm.
So we were we had we in the middle of workouts. or during like the short breaks, we would be able to talk about the common social things, and that just made the whole situation for me a little bit of a lighter, friendly, more relaxed um, type of experience, which I
Mm-hmm.
like, even though, at the end of the workout, I wasn't able to lift my sandwich or, I wasn't able, going up the stairs to hit the shower was like a chore. So you had that friendliness, and I'm a huge socialite. So being social is a big deal. And I wasn't in a, not going to the, I used to, when I go to the gym, that's when, I could be social after work sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So, I didn't have that degree of social exposure. So when my trainer came and we were social while, and also taking care of the workout, that was a huge deal for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's interesting. And with that, let me ask you this. Let's go a little deeper into this level of care that you mutually had with your personal trainer. Can you describe that level of care that you each exuded and just kind of talk about, did your trainer, would you think, then feel the same exact way in that he felt your goals were as important as his own?
Um, I mean, I definitely think he did.
Mm-hmm.
Because we had a friend relationship, and we had more going on than just client trainer relationship, that he felt that it was very important to help me get healthier and be in better shape, and he spent a lot of time to do it. And he would also, and sometimes I feel like he hung out a little bit longer, after a workout. He'd hang out, we'd chat, we'd play a game or something. And, even though sometimes that might have put a little bit of a strain on his schedule, he still did it every once in a while.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good. Let me ask you some hypothetical questions then. Let's say that your personal trainer ended up, for any reason, the relationship came to an end, and he ended up moving, you ended up moving, whatever the case, and you had to go find another personal trainer. And you find another personal trainer, but hypothetically, that other trainer does not exude the same level of care, and instead, rather, that other personal trainer you're working with, you find is kind of cold and robotic and almost distant towards you. How would that affect your personal training program, if it would at all?
I would definitely look forward to sessions less, and I would probably view
Mm,
the trainer as basically a source of equipment at that point.
mhm. So then, is it fair for me to
I'd be
suggest?
quick. I'd be quick to move over to another trainer if I found one I liked.
Ah, okay, okay. Um, how important is it then that you experience, let's say, a warm feeling with your personal trainer when you're spending time with them during the workout sessions?
I mean, I think it's very important to connect with the trainer. I mean, whoever, especially since I'm not, I'm not even doing it at a gym. I'm doing it at, it's at home. So if I don't like the person coming to my home, I'm not going to want them in my home so much.
Mhm.
You don't
Mhm.
want them in, I want them out. And if I even want them in, I'm going to look for someone I want to have in my house.
Mhm. C Can you then provide us maybe some examples, or any example at any time when your personal trainer might have gone above and beyond during the program, and just exceeded your expectations and exceeded the level of care that a personal trainer is required to? In other words, my question is, were there any times where he, in your personal training program, just went that extra mile and completed a level of satisfaction that is almost surprising of anybody in any endeavor or service industry?
Yeah, I mean, I went over to his house for dinner a couple times. Showed and then, I didn't show. I was and they showed me how to. He and his wife showed me how to prepare a healthy meal for the regiment I was doing.
Mm, mhm.
And and again, it was easier because we had developed that. rapport before we started working out. But we had and then his wife and his dog came over to my house, and and we hung out that way. And also we had the good eating, and that was start of the enjoyable journey of really good eating along with good training program.
Mm. And that's interesting. Let me then ask this question on competence then. I'm, I apologize, pardon me. Relatedness is what we're talking about. On that question then, when we're talking about relatedness, which you just covered, again, a lot of words that we just used. I've noted here that you mentioned connectedness and warmth and care and just relating to that trainer. In terms of relatedness, can you please describe how relatedness played a role in how successful you were in achieving your personal training goals then?
The relatedness between me and him really was the Kickstarter for the training program
Mm.
with him. Otherwise, I did have a motivation to begin doing it, but I think it would have been taken me a lot longer to be successful, and it would have been a lot more difficult and a lot less fun. So having
Mm.
that relatedness to him and to a trainer got me to start with a trainer, got me to get quicker results than I probably would have achieved on my own,
Hmm.
and
And
made it more enjoyable.
oh, and I'm sorry, I cut you off. Can
And
you
made it more enjoyable.
more enjoyable? Okay. You've made reference to that word several times over all three components of autonomy, competence, and relatedness. So I've made note here of saying enjoyable, fun, interest, results, goals, all those words that you've repeated. How high are those up in terms of overall for your self-determination with your personal training goals? Where do they rank?
Well, it's I mean, if you use those words to describe your life, you're probably going to be a happy person.
Mm, mm,
So, that I think that little tidbit I just said kind of explains it all.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's good. That's really, really good. Let me then move on to kind of summarizing what we've been talking about here and just bring it all together. When we talk about autonomy, we're going to go back to that word here for a second. Again, we're looking at the word autonomy, independence, and your own intrinsic motivation of creating your own decisions. And um, think about your own generation, the millennials, anybody in your age category who's 24 through 39 years old working with personal trainers for goals. How does your generation compare then to any other of the generations, whether they're younger or older than yourself, in terms of autonomy?
Oh, I mean, I definitely think that our generation needs a lot more autonomy than previous ones. I think you can get away with talking to, just telling other generations what to do, and as long as they're seeing the results, they're going to do it. I think the youngest generation now really needs to dictate the dictate the majority of all interactions that they have, be in control, and then the people servicing them have to really comply and just work within their ideas and their scope and what they're looking for.
Okay. Well, same question in terms of competence then. Competence, we're talking about mastery and a skill. How does then your generation of the millennials compare to other generation in terms of competency?
Competence. Let's see. I mean, I think I think talk is more important than results and goals. So they can snap and they can send pictures and talk about how much they're going to the gym, and that's all they need to do. Not as much. Oh, post about results and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think it's a lot more shallower now, and things are not as far as things aren't as goal oriented anymore. They're just it's more talk
Mm.
and action and getting things done.
Okay. Well, then how about relatedness, the belongingness? How does your generation of the millennials compare to other generations in terms of relatedness?
I think there's a much more need to feel socially connected than there used to be.
Mm. Hmm. Okay. And that's the millennials that you're
That's the
referring to.
millennials
Hmm.
and validated by other people and
Hmm.
not finding inner strength, inner acceptance, and inner, validity.
Okay. Good. Then let me tie this question into a further conclusion here then. How does your generation of the millennials compare to other generations in terms of the entire scope of self-determination?
I think the locus of of validity is no longer individualized into specific people as much as the public eye on them. So the way the likes they get on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter is what people make people what millennials are looking at as far as validating.
That's interesting. So then in that case, would you say that the millennials more than any other generation then are more tied and connected into social media and social
Yeah, for
networking?
sure.
Mm, that's interesting. That's probably for further exploration and further research. Good answers. Excellent. Well, I want to tell you that that concludes the questions I have of the interview. You did very well on answering everything. I appreciate your straightforward, honest answers. I'd like to now move forward here as we're getting close to wrapping up to your demographic profile. I just need to confirm with you a few things, please, if we could.
Sure.
Okay, so on my demographic profile that I have of you, I have that you are 31-year-old male of white Caucasian ethnicity.
Yes.
And the question of how long you've been working out with a personal trainer, your answer to that was at least 1 year up to 2 years.
Yes, I think that's wrong.
Okay. And on average, how
Not
many
sure what the actual time.
Oh, I'm sorry, I cut you off. What did you say?
I just I'm not exactly sure what the time frame is, but it's probably a little bit longer.
Okay, okay, that's fair enough. No worries. So closer to the 2 year spectrum then on that answer.
Yeah.
Okay, no problem. And on average, how many times did you work out with your personal trainer? Was it twice per week?
Usually twice, sometimes three.
Okay. And then the last couple of questions here on goal attainment. Your beginning body fat percentage was 21%, and then ending body fat percentage at 11% of a net loss of 10%.
Yeah.
Very impressive. And then finally, the amount of weight loss beginning 250 pounds, ending at 183 pounds with a net loss of 67 pounds.
Yeah.
Very impressive. I want to tell you that that was actually the highest level of goal attainment in terms of body weight that we had on the personal training demographic questionnaire. So I
Thank
just
you.
want, yeah,
I actually did get down into the 170s, and then during COVID, the coronavirus quarantine, I put on 15 pounds of muscle.
interesting. That's interesting. Ah, okay. Well, again, congratulations on such an impressive goal attainment there. That's just excellent. I'm so happy that you were able to be part of this study. And that again, as I'm concluding my questions, let me turn it around to you. Do you have any questions or comments that you'd like to address now? Anything to do with the interview, please?
I'm not particularly from the interview. I'm definitely more interested in hearing more about the results and what your plan is with the information.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, why don't I answer that for you real quick here then? Yeah, because I'm glad you asked that because I It's funny that you asked that because as I'm conducting these interviews, my goal is to get about 10 of the interviews done. And just about everybody that I've been interviewing has been asking that rather than just saying, okay, give me my money, let's close the interview. And
Yeah.
it shows me that you are very interested in this study, which it really excites me. I want to let you know in terms of answering your question for the study. As I mentioned, most importantly, of course, the study is going to be confidential, where your information won't be, published to where your name or identification will be revealed. But as far as a profile, it's going to be contributed to the final phases of a dissertation that I'm completing for my own academic research in hopes of attaining a sports psychology degree from Grand Canyon University. And with this study, hopefully you'll be able to get some valuable information out of it, because then I'm going to send you the final study so you can see how you not only match up against your contemporaries, but you can also see how millennials described exactly what I asked the same questions to the other individuals, just as yourself. You could see how initially there were about 50 respondents to the questionnaire and survey that you filled out, and you can see how you matched up in there. There'll be visuals, charts, and graphs just to kind of demonstrate where millennials are at accordingly to this study in self-determination and personal training goals. It's a phenomenal, pardon me, I'm sorry. It's a qualitative descriptive study. So it's kind of delving into the phenomena of how and why the factors of intrinsic motivation are connected to personal training. And so with that, again, I'm excited to share that with you and the others, because this, in my opinion, is the first study of its kind, making it very unique. And so I think that it's excellent for everybody, because you're the part of something that's almost groundbreaking, I believe, that needs a lot more literature contributed to it. So again, I'll definitely be able to get that to you. And I'm glad you asked that too, because that reminded me, when we're done recording, and I'll hit the stop record button here momentarily, pardon me, I'm going to send you the audio file of our conversation, but as well as an audio transcript, a full transcript of our interview for what we call member checking. And what that is that way you can overlook the transcript and listen to the audio. And if there's anything out of context, or if something you need to clarify or you'd like to add to or edit and revise, that gives you an opportunity to send it back to me before I finish my final summaries. And my goal is to put all this together and finish before March. So we're looking at about 2 months before I conclude with this. But did that, hopefully, that was kind of long-winded. I hope, did that answer everything you were asking?
Yeah, that answered it. And I'd also
Oh,
be
okay.
interested in reading the dissertation if you're willing to share.
Oh, yeah, please. I'd be excited. I'd be flattered, for one. And yes, absolutely, I will. There'll be, from what I understand, a published link once it is complete, and you will definitely get a full copy of that. I will send that to you when it's done, because I'm keeping everybody's information here for my own purposes, and that way I'll be able to send it to you. And all your information, by the way, I just want to let you know, the ways that I've contacted you, reached you, is secured on an encrypted, password protected computer, and all data will be secured safely, for 3 years and then destroyed after then. But
Yeah, I'm not concerned.
okay, well,
Thank you anyway on that.
okay, well, we're right at the end of the time here. I'm going to hit the stop record button right now.